Welcome back to our course. So the first lecture is on the data types, and as I would like this course to be very practical and hands-on learning and practicing coding, etc., I right away start diving into the coding environment so we can easily test everything here together. So basically, this is the environment that I'm using here, but it's not important what environment you're using. Whatever you're using, either it's online or it is installed on your desktop, Mac, or whatever. The important thing is that you just keep trying and you just keep making mistakes and try and start doing it. It may in the beginning look like, okay, this is too easy in the beginning. I don't even need to try it, but believe me, you need to try and you need to start coding. So, in the beginning, when we have like as you see here, everything is commented. But how things are commented in C++? If we want to comment something, for example, now I would like to make some changes. As you see here, we see the red part here, meaning that we did some modification, but we haven't registered it yet. And the modification that I just made was just pushing the tab button a bit so the line would start from the not from the start, but a bit further. So here we want to write something like author is Reza Shahin. So as you see, this is unknown type name for the programming language, and it returns immediately, it returns error. In order to keep some comments, we can just put two slashes here so it is now commented. I can have this one here, like the author, the date, uh, the I don't know, this code is the first version, for example. All these information can be commented, and then you start your code as of line 20, for example. So when I push Control S, everything is saved, and you see the green light here saying that, okay, this is now registered. So this is the first type of commenting in the code. And the second type is in C++, we can have slash star and then star slash in the end. And whatever that are between slash star and star slash are commented. As you see here, for example, for data types, it is commented, so it doesn't have any problem for the code and the compiler. Let's start from the line 1. This is the default include that we consider for the C++, and we include this one for considering a string in our code. But just by default, consider these two these two including parts. Later on the course, I would discuss different including things that we can consider and why they are important. But this is not the point of our lecture today. So these two includes are now working. The rest are commented as there are two slashes behind them. A typical C++ programming would have like a few lines for including lines and then one int main function. So when we open the int main function, the first lesson is the data types. So data types, we want to start it. As you see here, we put some information in commented, but the things that we would like to discuss in today are also commented. So I remove the slash. You see here, now we defined one integer value named a that is said to have the value 1. But we have one warning. It says that you declared one integer value and you have not used it yet. It's okay, but we are going to use it later. But it is just sending us some warning to consider. So the first data type is the integer. When we want to declare an integer value, one of the ways is to define it as int I, int, and all of them should be lowercase, equals to 1, and then we have a semicolon there. So we can also have like int When we used in a one time, we cannot say another time a. For example, I cannot reassign a. It says that redefinition of a, so there is an error. I would say a1. So a1 is 2 now. So we declare two integer variables. The first data type that we need to learn is the integer. And then we have the type float, that is for numbers that are having decimal values. So we define the float b with the value say 3.14, and we need to be careful about the semicolon in the end. Whatever we write in our C++ programming, it must end with a semicolon in a line. So it still gives us some warning saying that it is unused. Again, it's not a problem. We're going to use it. So there are two ways to define numbers that are having decimal values. The first one was float, and the second one was double. So we can also declare double when we are having a number with decimal values. And there are some, small differences between float and double that we will discuss later on in the course. However, if you want to just have a clue of the general differences, is that when we declare a number with the float type, it uses usually 4 bytes of memory, and when we declare it as a double, it uses 8 bytes of memory. So what's the difference? So it consumes the memory more. So if we are going to use a number that is larger than a certain amount, it is recommended to use double, so it gets more memory usage. But if we are going to simply use a number with decimal values that are not so much large, we can simply just declare them as a float. But how large, how small they should be to choose between float or double, this we will discuss in the comparison that we will make in the upcoming lectures. But for the moment, that is enough for you to know that there are two types, float and double, that you can declare either of them, but there are some differences in terms of the memory usage. And also double can represent a wider range of values compared to float, because because of its higher precision and larger memory size. So this is the only thing that we need to know for the moment about it. And then we have characters that we can define, like character. It is with the name char, char, and this is char name. It could be whatever. It could be like my character equals. It should be. You should really be careful about the quotations here. Like whatever you want to put there, you can put, for example, my name, Reza. It's okay, but it should be between these two quotations. If we forget about one quotation, we will have error. If we forget about two quotations, we will have error. So it must be between two quotations, and of course with a semicolon in the end. And the last one that we would like to discuss is a Boolean type. We declared an ABC named Boolean that could be whatever, like my bool, we could declare equals true. So for the Boolean, there are only two values that can be assigned, either true or false, and that's it. It's either 0 or 1. When it's true, it represents the value 1, and when it's false, it represents the value uh, when it's false, it represents the value 0. For the float number, it's the same. We can declare all the numbers with decimal values, and for the integer, it's only integer values. Sorry, for example, we cannot have an integer declaration for a and then consider having it with decimal values. It gives us some warning saying that you need to use double or maybe float for this and not the type integer. So these are the basics data types that we needed to know in the beginning. Then we learned about how to put comments. You see here now our code, we push the Control S and our code is registered, and these parts are comments. So whatever we put there, like whatever we type there, it's considered as nothing, as it is not even existed. So uh, this is the first way of putting comments, and then we have the second way of putting comments like this between slash star slash. And finally, we learned about different data types that we declared here. In the next lecture, we dive into more details about the data types. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this course. So in previous lecture, we learned how to declare some different data types, like as you see here, integer, float, double, characters, and booleans. In today's lecture, in today's lesson, we would like to print their values. So we declare an integer a1, for example, equals to 2. And we would like to print this integer value and see it in the terminal. Here we prepared something for you. As you remember, everything is commented here in between. Everything is commented. So I uncomment this line. Oh, sorry, I put it more comments. So I commented this line. I uncommented this line. I declare integer a equals 1 semicolon, and it ends. So this is the declaration that we have here. And remember that we had some commented libraries and including things here. So one of them is using namespace std. So let me explain what this std is all about. So here, now I uncomment this line and we will have probably some errors if we want to run it. So if we would like to print something, we would have to write std colon, then cout, means that show us the output. Then we would have these two signs. And then between quotations, we would be able to have the comments that we would like to be printed in the terminal. For example, we write it here, the value of a is, and one space is put here, so, and then we close the quotation. Then we mention a, so the value of the integer that we wrote will be printed, and then we put end l. Before end l, I would write std colon end l. So this is how we can print it. So let's try this one to see how the result would be. I run and wait for the compiler to run my code. Oh, here is the result. The value of a is 1. So what was the message that we typed here? So the value of a is, and then instead of this part that we put a, you see the value 1 is printed. So now that we know the value of putting the value of this integer being printed, we would like to mention that using namespace is very good. So now, if what happens if I remove this std? If I remove this std and run again the problem, we will see that we have an error. It says undeclared identifier, and also this one. If I remove them and compile, we will have 2 errors. So std is very important to be written every time, but because every time we need to write it down, it is not very convenient. Instead, we could use this using namespace std in the beginning of our program and forget about it throughout the program. So now that I uncommented that this using namespace std semicolon, we run the program again. Okay, this time we don't have any errors, and voila, it is printed. So if we are considering putting using namespace std semicolon in the beginning of our program, we can escape using it throughout the program. But if we don't mention it in the above, we need to type it every time that we are writing. So this is the first point. The second point is that the syntax for printing is cout. So when we use cout, we are sending the machine that we want to print. And the end L, let me just remove this end L so you will see how the result would be different. In this case, because we have only one printing, the result would not change, you see? Okay, so you see the press return to close this window came to the line 1. Previously, it was in the line 2. So let me print something else. Let me print it again. Let me just copy paste this line one more time. So now what happens is this. So you see the value of A is 1, the value of A is 1, press return true. So everything is printed in one line only. When we have instead, when we have the end line, we will see that it goes to the next line. So when we have the end L, we have the value of A is 1, then goes to the next line, and the value of A is 1. Again, press return. So if I also put the end L in here, I will see that we have 3 lines now. We should have 3 lines. Okay, you see here. So the value of A is 1, the value of A is 1, and then press return to close this window. So this shows the value of using end L in the end of the line. And so this lesson was all about the cout. So we printed the integer A1. So what about the next one? So the next one is a float type. So again, if we want to print it, we type cout. We can type a message, or we can even type nothing. But because we want our program to be clear, it would be better to type some message. For example, the value of B is, and then we put B here, and L, we Control S register, and we compile. Yes. So we see the value of B is 3.14. So easily we print this one. Again, for the double, the same thing. We can easily practice this, like cout, the value of C is, and C and L. We also have the characters and booleans. So I would write them together like this. So the value of char name is, then I put the char name here, and L. Also, we can write the value of my boolean is, then we put my boolean Just you should be very careful with the uppercase letter and lowercase letter in C++ because it is sensitive. So if I'm writing an uppercase M here, I should have the uppercase M here again. So let's check to see if we have errors or not. So we don't have any errors. Okay, great. So these are the prints. So we printed 2A, 1B. You see that the B is between quotations because here I put the quotations in the printing part. If I remove it, it will be removed. Then the C, then the char name is A because we put the value as the input A. And then the value of my boolean equals 1. Why 1? We set true. So as we mentioned earlier, for the boolean, we either have true or false. So the true equals 1 and the false equals 0. So whenever the print value is 1, just know that it is true. Whenever it is 0, just assume as false. So this is how we print our values. This is for how we print our values. And then in the next lecture, we are going to discuss about the operations using these data types. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to discuss how do we do the operations in C++. Previously, we learned how to declare data types, and we learned how to print them in the terminal. So now in this lesson, we're going to do some mathematical operations with the declared data types. So let's dive into it. We declare two integer variables. The first one is int a equals 31, and the second one is b equals 15. So previously we learned that if we want to declare an integer or any other types of data types, we can simply assign a value to them. However, in this lesson, we're going to learn that we can do some mathematical operations for the assignment of data types. For example, we have integer c assigned to be the a plus b. So instead of putting the value of like 46, we can simply let the machine and the computer do the assignment, do the math part, and then assign it to the integer c. And also, if you see here, while I was commenting this line, the 77 line, we had two warnings for 75 and 76, these two lines. We had a warning saying that, okay, you declare these two variables, integer variables, these two, but you're not using them. So why it is returning some warning? The reason that it returns some warning is that we are using some memory of the computer by declaring a new variable. And if we are not going to use it, the compiler would give us some warning saying that, okay, you declared this one and you're not using it. So you may want to consider removing it to release some memory. In this level of programming, it may not be very very necessary to keep track of your memory. However, as we proceed through the coding and as we advance in programming, it is very important to manage the memory very well so we can increase the speed of the program or avoid having some memory leak problem, something like this. So for the moment, it's not important. However, now that I uncomment the line 77, we will see the warning for these two lines are disappeared. The reason is that we are using them. We declared something, A and B, and we are using them in the line 77. However, we are not using integer C. That is why we still have a warning for this line. So let's print out this line. We learned that if we are using namespace std in the beginning of our code, we don't need to write std comma comma cout every time. So here, when I have that declared in the beginning of the code, I just write C out, then I write whatever the message I would like the value of A is, and then I put the A here and L, and we run. We will see that it now needs to show us the value of A. Now it's compiling, we didn't have any error, so we see that the value of A is printed. So let's go for the next two lines. The value of B and the value of C is also printed with these commands. Let's try. We have no errors, it's compiling. Okay, so the value of A is printed like 31, the value of B is printed like 15. The value of C is also printed as 46. So the key point to today's lecture was that the math is done by the machine. We don't need to do the calculation. We just assigned the A plus B to C and it did the calculation itself, and now it's printing it. So now that we see that we have this option, we can uncomment these parts as well. Like we declare D, E, F, and G to be A minus B assigned to D, A times B assigned to E, A divided by B assigned to F, and A modulo B, which returns us the value of the remainder of when A is divided by B. So here you see we used integer C, so the warning for this line is disappeared now. So we still have the warning for the rest because we are not using them anymore. We're not using them yet, let's say. So let's print out these values to see how it would work. Now compiling, no errors. Okay, so let me bring it down here so we can compare it with the operations. Okay, now it's good. So A minus B is printed to in D and stored in D. So it's 16, which is their difference. So A times B is 465 that is stored in E. We can see it in this line. And then we have the F as to be 2. So when A is divided by B, the value would be 2. And the remainder is 1 because when A is divided by 2 by B, which is 15, the remainder would be 1. If we change the value from 31, for example, to 30, we would see that the remainder should change. Compiling, no error. Let's see the result. Yes. So still we see that the A divided by B is stored in F. It is still showing number 2, which is correct. However, when we change 31 to 30, we have no remainder because these are so 30 is 15 times 2, so no remainder is rested will be there when we divide A by B. So in today's lesson, we learned that the operations can be done by the machine, and we tested some beginners operations, mathematical operations, and let the machine do the mathematical formulation. In the next lecture, we are going to do the same mathematical operations, but to the float data variables. Hello again, welcome back. Today we're going to discuss about the operations, the second part about the floats. In the previous lecture, we discussed how we do the operations for the integers. And in today's lecture, we are going to do the same operations with floats. So we declare different floats here as A, B, and then as of C, we have the operations involved in the assignment. So C equals A plus B, D equals A minus B, E equals A times B, and F equals A divided by B. So there is one thing to be very careful about when we are doing these mathematical operations for the float. So all of these operations are possible to be declared and assigned for a float, but for the module, it's not working. So this is some limitation of C++ that does not allow to use the modulo operation for the float value. So we need to be careful about it. In case you're seeing this error in your compiler, you need to be careful. You need to think, oh, okay, this is not possible for the float. So it says that it invalid to binary expression float and float. So it's not possible to do the uh, module operations for the float. However, the rest of them are easy to do. It's exactly like the integer data types. So here we compile, so we see no errors. So the error is gone when we commented everything about the module. So it does print the value of A indeed, the value of B, and then C as the A plus B, and then D, E, and F. So this lecture is very similar to the previous one. This is only to keep noted that we cannot use module for the float variables. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about library functions. So for the library functions, there are a few things that we need to know before we dive into the lessons. So there are some already defined functions and libraries in C++ that can help us to do some mathematical operations. And there are some reserved strings and let's say strings for performing these mathematical operations. So when we mention that there are some reserved strings for these things, it means that we cannot use these reserved ones to name our integer, to name our own newly defined string, etc. But now I will give you more information so you will get to know that. But before we go for the library functions, we go up to the code in the beginning of our code. Here, because I want to use these libraries and I want to use the already defined library functions of C++, I need to include it in the C++ program in the beginning. So don't forget to include CMath before we dive into these lesson. So in order to proceed here, we wanna show some already defined library functions in C++. So we define, as before, we define two integer values like x and y. The x equals 25 and y equals 4. And as we are not using them, they are like having the warning in the code now. In order to print them, we use the syntax of cout. We know it very well now. And in the end, we put the end L to make sure that it goes to the next line for the following codes. But what are the reserved functions? The first one is sqrt. The sqrt function gives us the a square value of a number, of an integer. So when we define an integer here like x equals 25, and when we want to uh, have the square root of the x, we can simply write sqrt, and within brackets we put the number. So easily it will print us the square bracket of the integer x. So let's compile and see. . So now no errors. Exactly. So the square root of 5, a square root of 5. So what we had there was something like a square root of x is 5. So the better typing would be the square root of uh, x, and then we put is the rest of the code. So this can give us a better output and more clear output. So let's check it out again. Let's try this. Yeah. So the square root of 25 is 5. So this is what it is now printing for us. So the first library function is the sqrt. The second one is that when we want to do some mathematical formulation or have some countings in our code, simply we can, for example, instead of doing the math ourselves, like 4 times 4 equals 16, we can define 4 as to be an integer named y, and the power and y to the power of 2 would be like this: po bracket y comma 2. So this code will help us to have the result of the y to the power of 2. Why we are using this? Let's see the print and then I will explain. So it says that power y2 is 16. So here I say power y, so let's say y to the power of 2 equals 16. So why do we need this formula? This formula would be helpful when we have a lot of computation that we need to do. It's easier to automatic everything in the code rather than dive into the details. So it's easier to let the machine do the formula, do the math part for you, and just you use the formulation so you can easily make sure that everything is handled correctly and very well. So the next one is that we define a new integer value, integer variable. We call it val, and the number that is assigned to it is -5. Then, in order to have the absolute value of x, we simply can use this formula abs. Within the bracket, we put the name of the integer variable that we defined. So let's compile and see what the result would be. We have no errors, it's compiling. Okay, now the absolute value is 5. You see? Here we assigned -5 and the absolute value is 5. So it is giving us the absolute value. It's a very straightforward library function that we can use in our code while we're doing the formulations. So the next one is we define a double called num and we assign the number 4.3. And so in order to have the rounding up a number to an integer, the nearest integer to it, like rounding up to the nearest integer, would be using the cell function. So we say cell within the bracket num, it will give us the output of 5. So the output of 5 is expected to be seen here. Let's try and see what would happen. Yes, so here we see that the ceiling value is 5. So the original number was 4.3, but the ceiling value is 5. It is rounding up to the nearest integer. Again, we can do this for like the other way. The other way around would be to round down a number. So to round down a number, we define another double called num2 and we assign the value 4.7, and instead we use the floor function. So instead we would use the floor function, and this time we are expecting to see the output as to be 4. Now compiling, no errors. Yes, the floor value equals 4. Let's check it out again here. Sorry. Let's check it out again here. Yeah, so the original number was 4.7 and the printed number is 4. So it rounded down the double number. So another function that would be very helpful for us in C++ would be the following. So if we have two numbers and we want to make sure what the result of what the larger number is among these two. So it's sometimes you might say that, okay, so if we know two numbers like 2 and 7, we already know that the larger number is 7. Yes, this is straightforward. However, in the day-to-day coding, you may define two integer values in the beginning of your code, like let's call them x and y. Then you do a lot of computation on these two values. And since the machine is handling all the computation, you don't know that x would be larger or y would be larger after like 100 lines of code being done for the calculation. And in the end, you just care about the larger number. So instead of, reading all those lines and going through the details, etc., you can simply use this library function. So in the end, you can simply just find fmax, the integer value for the first integer value, and comma the second integer value like here, and then it will just give you the largest value. So here we use fmax, and there are two values, 3.7, 3.5 and 7.2, and obviously the larger is 7.2, so you can easily get the larger number here. So this is the maximum, 7.2. As I mentioned, it may be straightforward, but when you automate everything in the code, like in tens of lines of code, in the end, you don't need to go through the details. You just simply use this function and it will return you the larger number. Hello everyone, welcome back to this course. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to read data from the terminal. So previously, we used to work with like this, like we would say int a equals 10, and then we learned how to print it. So the value of a is a and L. So previously we learned about this, so we compile. So compiling, no error. So here we see that it printed our data. So what if we want to read the data actually from the terminal? So if we want to do that, if we want to read the value a from the terminal, we should change our approach somehow. So we can change our approach like this. We just define our integer data type, like called a, and then we learn here a new syntax that is cin, and then we see in the a that we have here. But in order to read it from the user, we need to first show a cout message to the reader saying that, for example, whatever you want, you can say that tell me what your number is, and then we close it. Then we store the number that the user tell us. We store it here, and then we show it here. Let's try this program together to see if it works or not. So yeah, it says that tell me what your number is. So I would say 10, and it returns me the value saying that the value a is 10. So here we declared the integer, then we sent a message through the terminal to the user saying that, okay, tell me what your number is. And whatever the user enters here, it will be stored in the a using the cin syntax. And then here again with the cout syntax, we show what the stored and entered integer value was. So let's have some more examples here. So here again, I define another int. So let me comment the above lines so it's clear. So we have an integer value called number. We show the print value to the terminal, enter an integer, and we read the number, and then we show the number. So it's again the same procedure. We first declare the integer, we show the message, and then we store the number that is entered by the user, and then we show the output. So here again we compile. Let's see how it would work. So enter an integer. I would say 14 this time. It says you entered integer 14. So it stores it here. So the application of this is very widely known. For example, if you want to enter your panel through a website or where you have registered already, so you enter your for example, username for the first time and the password for the first time. So these two are stored in the database of the website if they're using C++, for example, one option could be using cin. So they store it in their database, and the next time that you want to visit the website or wherever that registration is, you enter everything and they check your entered data with their already stored database, and if it's there, they say okay, you can come in. There are some if conditions to check before they let you in that we'll discuss later on this course. So this is how integer is done. Then if we want to consider a character, so let me comment the ones that for integers here. So we have a clear code. So let's say I have a character defined that is char and the name is character. So that is char. You can call it whatever you want. Instead of that, I can say my char, for example. I would say this. So whatever you want, it's your call. So then we show the message to the user saying that enter a character, and then using cin function, we store it. And now here we have an error because we changed the name of the declared character. I would say my char. So and then here we should have another error because we need to change the character here. So here what I'm doing is that I am declaring a character, then I'm showing again I'm going through the procedure. I'm showing a message to the user saying that okay, enter your character. Then we store the character using cin function and we print it out. Okay. So for a character, we know that we need to store only one letter. So let's compile. We're compiling. Let's check it out. I would say R. And it returns me my character. Let's compile again. This time, for example, I would say A. It returns me the character again, A. So, but what if I want to put two letters like RE? It returns only R. What if I want to store more than one? Like I would say Reza. It only returns me R. Why? The reason is that we declare it as a char. So char only is able to store one letter, not more than that. So even if you write many letters there, it does not register it. It only is able to register the first letter. So this is something very important to keep in mind while you are using the characters. So what if we want to consider more than one letter? So then we don't have to use char or char, we are only using string. So in that term, let me comment these lines so everything is clear, so we know which lines are currently working. Let's go down. Yeah. So here we need to declare string. So when we want to use a string, we need to be careful to include this in the beginning of our code. So we did this already in another lesson. Here, string is included, so no worries. So we are calling the libraries of the C++ when we are including this. So, okay, we declare one string, the name is word. The name could be whatever you want. So here I name it as word. Again, the same procedure. We show a message to the user saying that enter a word and then store the word using cin function. And then we simply print it. So this time I compile. Let's see the result. No error. Okay. Enter a word. I would say Reza. This time, because we declared a string, it returns the full letters. It's not only the first letter like car. So let's try again. I would say whatever you want, like Amir Hossein. It returns Amir Hossein. Whatever you want. Let's try again. We say peer. It returns peer. One important point about the way that we are reading the information from the input is the following. So here I'm defining a string. I'm storing everything using cin function. So cin function cannot go after one space. What that means? That means it means that, for example, when we were having characters being stored, only the first letter could be stored. When we are having a string being stored using cin function can go up to no matter how many number of letters you have in your string, but there should be no space between them. If there are spaces between them, it cannot differentiate it. Let me just give you an example. So here we wrote Reza and Reza was okay. But if I push this space and then I write, for example, my last name, it returns me only the first part. So when we are using the cin function for storing the input, to read and store the input, it goes until the first string, and the second one is missed out because there is a space there. So, but if I compile again and write my first name and last name like this, it's okay. But there is no space here. Usually we put a space there. So what do we do? This is one of the problem using cin function. So let me just comment again. So here I'm commenting everything. So we go to the next lesson. So here I am declaring another string. I am couting, just enter 2 words or 3 words or whatever, and the full string, just whatever. But here I'm not reading the input as before. So before I was only using cin, but here I am using a get line and within bracket cin input. This helps us to read the entire line and not only the first word. Let's try this one. So if we try this one, let's see what happens. So if I write Reza, it will say Reza. Let's compile again. If I write Reza Shahin with a space, it gives me Reza Shahin with a space. And if I say like Reza Shaheen, it gives me the full line. So this is the one of the important things that we need to consider while reading the input. Depending on what we want to get from the user, we need to code based on that. Initially, we showed that an integer value can be declared, then a message sent to the user. We store it using cin, and then we show the message. We can do this with the characters, but only one letter can be stored in characters. So if we are aiming to get an information from the user that is one character, we use char because it uses less memory. But if it's more than one character and one letter, let's say, we need to use string. And if we want to use a string, if the string is only one word and no space there, so we can simply use cin function to read the data and store it. However, if there are multiple words and there are some spaces between them, we need to use getLine instead of cin only. We use the function getLine, and within bracket you just type down cin input. This is some predefined function from the C++. And then you store it. Thank you very much for following this course. In the next lesson, we will dive into the deeper understanding of C++. See you there. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to do some exercises. So this is the video for the first coding exercise. So write a C++ program that reads two numbers from the user and print its result. So this is the exercise that you need to do on your own, and you should be able to do it on your own since you've been seeing these videos and I have taught all the necessary things that you need to know to solve this program. So please, before seeing the answer and before going through my explanation, pause the video, go and do the exercise yourself and try to debug it, try to find the problem, where the problem is, and try to, practice it on your own first. And if you could do it, great, you learned everything. And if you couldn't do it, it's not a problem. There is always room for improvement. So you come here, you see the problem and how I'm solving it, and you can then navigate where your problem is exactly coming from. So if you have done practicing, now look at this. Continue looking at this video. Continue watching this video. So we need to declare two numbers. So I'm a user. So and machine needs to. We need to write a program that machine sends me two messages saying that okay, tell me two numbers, and then I will tell the machine two numbers, whatever I want, and the machine needs to do the computation for me. And what would be the sum of these two numbers? In order to do that, we first declare two integer values or whatever, float, whatever your choice is. So we declare now, I'm declaring two integer variables that are called A and B. Then I show the message to the user saying that enter your first number. Then I'm storing the first number here. Then showing another message saying that enter your second number, then I'm storing the second number, and then I declare a new data like C that is an integer and it is assigned the sum of A and B. Then when I store the result in C, I show the C using cout function. So the procedure is always the same. We declare one data type, whatever we want, integer or like float, double, whatever. Then we show the message to the user enters the value, then we store the value that is entered by the user, and then if there is some operations like mathematical operations that needs to be done, we do it, and then we see out everything. We show the message again to the user. So it's very straightforward. Let's compile. So now it's compiling. So type your first number, I would say 14. Type your second number, I would say 20. And voila, it says the sum of your two numbers is 34. So this is the first coding exercise. We are going to have more and more coding exercises, and it's important to focus and try to learn from your mistakes and first do the exercises on your own and then come back here to correct your errors or to validate your solution. Thank you for watching. Hey everyone, welcome back. So the second exercise. Write a C++ program that reads two float numbers from the user and store their sum and product in two other float numbers. Then show the original results along with the rounded up results of sum and product. So this program involves several steps. In order to make the program easy for you, for yourself in the beginning, you need to break it down into steps. So the first step, get two numbers from the user. Use for the user, get two float number. Yeah. So we break it down for ourselves to make it easier for us to understand it. So then store the float numbers. Then do mathematical operations on the stored numbers that are sum and product, and then show the original sum and product of two stored numbers, and finally show the rounded up sum and product of two stored numbers. So you see here, we had only a very short description of the program. However, now that we break it down into steps, it's easier to understand it. So every time you want to write a program, just don't start right away. First, start breaking down the steps to see what the question is asking you. What is it that it wants? So now we broke down the steps. So please pause this video and go and try and practice to see if you can solve this program yourself or not. If you have any problem, you can just come back to this video or write to me to ask any questions. I will be happy to help you. And then if you have some problems, you can come back here and see the video and then compare it with your own code to see where the problem comes from. So the only way that you can learn how to do programming is to practice it. So please don't skip exercising by your own computer. So if you did think and you have some results, that is correct, great. If there are some bugs, it's okay, we go through it again. We go through them again here together so you can navigate your problem. So for the first one, get two float numbers from the user. Float A and float B needs to be declared. I declared them here. I show a message to the user saying that, okay, enter your first float. I store it using cin syntax. Then for the second float, I show the message and then I store. Then, so the first step is done. The second step is done. So do the mathematical operations. So in order to do some mathematical operations, we declare two other new floats. So here I name one of them sum, that is assigned to a plus b, and another one is product, that is assigned the value of a times b. So now we did the mathematical operations here literally. Then it tells me that we need to show the original sum and product of two stored values. So because the stored values are float values, there are some decimal along with them, some decimal numbers associated to them. So showing their original means you touch nothing of the sum of the and product. You just show it right away in the terminal. So using this cout, I say the original sum is, and then I put the sum, and the original product is, and then I put the product. I put end L so it goes to the next line. However, the last step is asking us to show the rounded up sum and the product. If you remember in the library function lesson, we learned how to do the round up. So we use cell function in order to round up our numbers. So here we do the same, cout, the rounded up sum is cell sum within bracket, and then the rounded up product is sale product, and then end L. So let's try this out together to see how it works. Okay, compiling, building, no errors. Great, so the first float would be like whatever, 5.14, and the second one I would say 8.63. 63, yeah, whatever you prefer. Voila. So it says that the original sum is 13.77 and the original product is 44.3582. However, the rounded sum is 14, which is true because it is rounded up of 13 point something. And then the product rounded up is 45, which is true. It's like 44 something. It rounded up to 45. So great. We did the program and implemented it very well. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to practice this and then move to the next video. See you in the other one. Welcome back. So in this lesson, we're going to discuss about the third coding exercise. So the program is asking, write a program that asks the user to enter the radius of a circle, a floating point number, and then calculate and display the area of the circle. So here, if we want to break down the program, we need to write it like so. First, to ask a number from the user, then to do the calculation of the area of the circle, and finally to display it. So I think it would be a good practice for you to start breaking down the program that you're asked to code. So it helps you in the beginning, especially it helps you to clearly navigate through the steps to reach the result you're looking for. So now please pause this video and think about this exercise and then come back to this video. Okay, so in order to ask a number from the user, we define a double, we call it radius. Then, as always, we go through the procedure that we have. So we show a message to the user saying that, okay, enter the radius of the cycle of the circle that you're looking for, and then we store it using cin syntax. And then we have the formulation here. So the formulation says that we initialized a double called area that is assigned the value of pi, which is 3.14. This is the formula for calculating the area of a circle. So 3.5 times the radius of the circle to the power of 2. So in order to have the radius of the circle to the power of 2, if you remember, we in the library function lecture, we had this whole library function that gives us that calculates automatically the value of the number that we are having here to the power that we want here. So we need to calculate radius to the power of 2. So we put the radius on the left and the power of 2 to the right. And finally, we see out the result. So the area of the circle is, and then we put the area, and we don't need to write the std because initially we included using namespace std in the beginning of our code. Let me show it again here. So because we have this one here using namespace std, we don't need to repeatedly use it in our program. So let's go down. Okay, here we are. So now let's just compile and see the result. So no error. It is asking enter the radius of the circle. So here I would put like 2.25, and it calculates the area of the circle that we are looking for, which is 15.8963. So this is the third exercise. In the next lecture, we are going to dive deeper into other practices. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Here we have the fourth coding exercise. So write a program that reads the radius and height of a cylinder from the user and calculate the volume. So let's break down. The first thing is to break down the program. So the first thing is that read the radius and height from the user. Secondly, calculate the volume of a cylinder. Third, show the result. So this is a good practice for you. And we know that from before, the formula to calculate the volume of a cylinder is pi, which is a fixed number, 3.14 approximately, radius to the power of 2 times height. So this is the formula. Please pause the video now and go and practice, and then continue watching this exercise being solved. Okay, so the first thing is that read the radius and height from the user. So here we are reading the radius and height from the user. We are showing a message saying that enter the radius of the cylinder, and then we store it using cin or scene, and we see out enter the height of the cylinder, and then using cin syntax we are storing the height. And then here we have the formula saying that we initialize a double called volume. The formula is pi number times radius to the power of 2 times height. And then in the last line, we use cout syntax to show the volume. So let's compile and see how it works. Okay, no error. So let's just think about the radius, like I would say 3.17, and the height would be 10. So it calculates here, it calculates the amount that a volume of a cylinder with a radius of 3.17 and the height of 10 for us, which is 315.535. So this is very good. The something that we need to make sure of is that in our program, so this program is very straightforward, but something to make sure of is we sometimes have a result and we need to validate the result that we have. So for example, it says that the cylinder is volume is around 315. So how to make sure that this result is okay or not? So as I said, this is very straightforward, so we know that it's true, but sometimes when the program is complex, we need to make sure. In order to make sure is that we print step by step of the result. For example, we would be able to, here, first, we have a double called radius to power 2, which equals the power of 2 of the radius. So we store it here. So this is the first thing. And then we can see out the power of 2 is the power of 2 of radius is, then we print it, like we print this uh, this one here, and del. Also, we can print the value of like pi number times the radius to the power of 2. Here we have the, for example, let's initialize something here before doing that. Double AA, I would call it, which is 3.14 times the radius to the power of 2. So here I also print this one. And then we have like double, another double, saying that AA times height. See out the volume should be AAA, and then and L. So here what I am doing, oops, sorry about this. So we need to write it see out. So initially I straightforwardly stored everything, did the calculation here, and then I printed everything. So sometimes, as I said, it's very straightforward, but sometimes we make mistakes. We don't know that we are making mistakes, and we don't know the result that is obtained is the correct result or not. So sometimes it would be nice to validate the results. In order to validate the result, we broke down this formula calculation. So initially we calculated the power of 2 of the radius. Then we have its product with the pi number, and then the result is here written in a new double AAA, triple A, which is the double A times height. So let's compile and see how the result would be. Is it okay? Everything is fine or not? So the radius of the cylinder is 2.14, and I would say the height is 10. Here, let me minimize this one so we can compare. Okay, so here we see that the calculated volume of a cylinder is around 143. Okay, it's okay. So it's the final result. But we progressively obtain the result as of here. So as of here, we calculated the power of 2 of the radius, then the power of 2 of the radius times the pi number, which is this number, 14, around 14. And then this number times to the volume, to the height of the volume, to the height of the cylinder, which gives us the volume of the cylinder, which is exactly the same number that we obtained in this formula. So sometimes it would be nice to validate the results. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next exercise. Hi guys. So in this exercise number 5, we are asked to write a program that reads the principal amount, rate of interest, and the time in years from the user and calculate the simple interest using the formula in the below. So the formula is, we have it like interest equals principal times rate times time. All of them are divided by 100. So please pause this video and go and think about this and how to write this program. It is very easy, so you need to practice yourself. If you have already done the practice, okay, let's dive in. So the first thing is that we need to break down the program. The first one is that read the data from the user, do the calculation, then show the result. So these are the three steps that we are going to take. So firstly, in order to read the data from the user, we need to declare three doubles here: principal, rate, and time. We show a message one by one to the user. We store using cin syntax. Again, we show the message, we store the rate, show the message, and store the time. And then here we have the formula, which is the double interest equals exactly like the same formula as it is given. So principal times rate times time, all of them divided by 100. And finally, we show the result. So let's just compile the code and see how it goes. So I would say the principal is 200,000. The interest rate is like 4.15, and years, I would say 30. So the simple rate is around 249,000. So this is the result. So let's check everything that we did together again. So we read the data, we first declare the double, we read the data, we store the data, we write the formulation, and then we show the results. Thank you for watching. Hi again. Congratulations on your perseverance and continuing to do the exercises. They are indeed very important. They may look very easy practices here, but it is essential to start coding yourself, to get used to the coding and follow the logic of the coding. So, exercise, coding exercise number 6. So write a program that reads a temperature in Celsius from the user and converts it to Fahrenheit. And we know from before that even if we don't know, we can just search Google and find this formula. So Fahrenheit, a degree in Fahrenheit equals a degree in Celsius times 9 on 5 plus 32. So this is the already known formula, and we accept it as it is. So we break the program. So we need to read the data from the user, do the calculation, and show the result. So it's very straightforward. So we initialize a double called Celsius, and we show a message to the user saying that enter the temperature you have in mind in Celsius. So and then we store it using cin syntax. Then we do the Fahrenheit double here equals Celsius, exactly like the formula. Celsius times 9 on 5 plus 32. And then we show the result as Fahrenheit. So let's try this. So I would say, let's say 25. So 25 degree in Celsius would be 77 in Fahrenheit. So let's try it again. So here we have like 12.5. So the degree in Fahrenheit would be 54.5. Thanks for watching. In the next video, we will have more exercising. Welcome back to another coding exercise. Coding exercise 7. Write a program that asks the user for a floating point number and rounds it up and down. Previously, if you remember, we had two library functions that could do this for us. So one of them was ceil and the other one was floor. Ceil would have rounded up a number to a nearest integer, and then floor was rounding down the number to the nearest integer. So we break down the program. So we read the data from the user. What's the floating point number that you want to enter? Then we do the calculation using these two library functions. And then we show the results. So here we initialize a double called number. We show the message to the user saying that, okay, enter a floating point number. Then we store this number using cin syntax. After that, we show the result using cout. Here, showing the result and the calculation are both in the same step. So here we can easily say that cout rounded up is sealed number within the bracket, and then rounded down is floor, the number within the bracket. So this number is exactly that number we initialize here, and we store the entered number in this number. So it could be like whatever, my value, for example. Okay, so don't get confused with the name. So it could be my value, whatever. So let's try this one. So I would say 12.15, sorry, 12.15. So the rounded up is 13, the rounded down is 12. So here I show the result using with the calculation all at the same time. You could also, one practice for you could be you initialize another double, like for example, you could do something like this, double my value rounded up, and then this is equal seal my value. Okay, so oops, I had a typo there. So here is seal. Okay, so then you could do the same for the floor, and then instead of doing the calculation directly here, you could easily just print this my value rounded up and my value rounded down. This would be a good practice for you. So like double my value rounded down equals floor my value. So I would write up until here. I will leave the practice to you. So print these two values instead of these two formula here, like the seal and the floor. Thanks for watching. In the next video, we will dive into more exercises. Hi again. Welcome back to the coding exercise number 8. Here, we want to write a program that takes two integers from the user and performs three operations, including addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Here, we first need to read the data from the user. As always, we do the calculation, and finally, we show the result. So please pause the video here and go and practice yourself. If you have already practiced this, okay, let's carry on and dive into it. In order to do that, we need to first initialize two integers like int num1 and num2. The names are not important, as you know. Whatever you want, you can put it there. Then we cout enter the first integer, and then we use the cin syntax to store the num1. Then we have the cout enter the second integer, and then we store it using cin syntax in num2. In order to do the calculation, we can do the calculation separately and then show the results. But here since the calculation is not so complex, I am showing the result as I'm doing the calculation simultaneously. So what I mean is that I cout, I would say addition, then num1 plus num2. So the result of num1 plus num2 would be printed here. And then for the subtraction, num1 minus num2. And then for the multiplication, we have the num1 and num2. So let's try and practice this to see. Let's compile and see how it works. So I would say the first number is, for example, 5, and the second number is 2. So the first number and the second number's addition are 7, is 7. The subtraction is 3, and the multiplication is 10. So it's very easy. We can do the math ourselves to validate the result. So this is one way to show the results. Another way to show the result would be like we initialize 3 other values like a, int b, and int c. So this is how we used to initialize our integers. Something to mention here is that we can do something like this. Instead of one by one initializing them, we could simply say int b, int c, and that's it. So we initialize 3 integers in one line, and we have the warning because we have not yet used them. It's not a problem with the declaration. So then we would say a equals num1 plus num2. Then we do the calculation for the num1 minus num2, and we assign it to b. And then for the c, we have the num1 times num2. So the second way of showing the result would be like this. So instead of doing the calculation here, we can just print a here, we can print b here, and we can print c here. So let's try again. So I would say again 5 and 3. So the result, the addition is 8, which is correct. Subtraction is 2, which is correct. Multiplication is 15, which is also correct. So there are 2 ways. It depends which way is easier for you to do. How it really depends on how you approach the problem and how it is convenient for you to do the coding. The steps could be different, but the result is important as long as we are writing everything in a clean way. And one reminder that I would like to mention is that here when we used to say slash slash, we could add comments that had no impact on the program that is being executed. So here I could say I am declaring 3 integers in one line. Here I am calculating the addition. So usually programmers, they add comments like this in their program because now the code is simple. But when you're becoming an advanced user of C++ or whatever the programming language that you want to program with in the future, there are syntaxes that are very advanced and there are computations that are very complex. So, and usually when you are in a team of developers, you share your codes with each other. So in order to save time for your colleague, it would be nice to leave some comments like this here so your colleague don't have to, go through the details of your code to, to understand what you did easily. He or she can read the comments and understand what you wanted to mention and what you were trying to do in your coding. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to practice.